Good morning. I thoroughly enjoyed those who brought us the opportunity to sing before God. If I were a wise man, I would say that my short, brief introduction to the day would be better served by having the three who just led us continue to lead us. There's something about song, about the nature of music, truly about the nature of bringing beauty to God, that sometimes I think in Protestant circles we actually think words are more important than other forms of gesturing to God. And so I humbly will take the stage. I will not invite them back up, but just to say there's something about the nature of bringing song to God. To not only sing to remind ourselves of His song on our behalf, but to sing to Him for bringing delight to Him. I know my voice is a voice that if heard in the category of solo, is a sound of cacophony. It's not melodious. It is not sweet. It's not a sweet sound unto God. I know that from many experiences. I was once in a church singing next to a 70-some-year-old woman who truly, you could just tell by the nature of her very being, had been really a follower of Christ all her life and just a woman of God. And many years ago, we're holding an actual hymn book. Do you remember what a hymn book is? We're holding a hymn book together, and as we're beginning to sing, we probably made it through one or two stanzas of a song, and she literally turned to me and she said, "Stop." And I was really sort of taken away by like, yes, ma'am. And I didn't sing. And about the fourth, as we got into the fourth verse, she said, "You can hum." And it was like, if she had told me to genuflect, I would have done whatever she told me to do. But I sort of quietly hummed unto God. But the very nature of our lives, whether we have a voice or not, the very nature of our lives are meant to be a gift to God as well as a gift to one another. And what I want to see if we can put a few words to prior to beginning is a passage in 2 Corinthians, and we'll look at two. Again, the dilemma is, I don't know why I travel with a Bible I can't read. But it's easier. So if you have your scriptures with you, 2 Corinthians chapter 3, and starting with verse 17. "Now the Lord is the Spirit, and where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. And we who with unveiled faces all reflect the Lord's glory are being transformed into His likeness with this ever-increasing glory, which comes from the Lord, who is the Spirit." That passage, if you just gaze quickly through 2 Corinthians chapter 3, you see that there are a couple themes that come up. One is that we have the very Spirit of God shining through our faces, unlike Moses, whose face is shielded. For whatever reason, it's shielded. Ours are unveiled. So there is something about the nature of how we go into this topic. We go into a very dark topic, but we go into a dark reality with the sense that our faces are meant to be unveiled. There is a boldness we bring to this. There is a strength we bring to it and a freedom we bring to the reality of all forms of human darkness. It does not imply we go in to address these issues naively. If you understand the nature of human trafficking, almost every form of trafficking is being supported by some mafia, that is, some structure of organized crime. Organized crime does not exist in any country or any world without fundamental governmental support in that place. So we're not talking about anything other than human evil, human corruption, human deceit. And so darkness is not to be entered naively. You don't go into war with kind of a white little handkerchief and go wave it against a machine gun nest with kind of a notion of my presence alone. I'll stop this terrible evil by just saying to those bad people, stop doing this. Put most simply, naivete will get you killed. And so this is an issue where there is fear, legitimate fear. There's a question of whether God is at work legitimately. There are many questions that we have to bring to our experience of dealing with human evil. But the reality is, we go into this frame with two key words. We're bold and we're free. But now, if that were alone the passage, so much could be made of it, but I want to take you quickly into the larger narrative of 2 Corinthians, in this case 3 and 4, and that is to take you to another passage that Paul is in many ways explicating, trying to make clearer what he means by what does it mean to live with freedom? What does it mean to live with boldness? What does it mean that we live with unveiled faces in the world as it is? And again, the larger context doesn't get fully described by this passage, but it gives a good glimpse, starting next chapter, chapter 4, starting with verse 7. But we have this treasure. Treasure meaning what he was referring to earlier. This great glory that shines within us, this freedom, this boldness. We have this treasure in jars of clay, to show that the all-surpassing power is from God and not from us. Even that is a sweet verse. I'm basically saying, though we bear this glory and we shine with this glory is shining through really a jar of clay. And really a jar of clay was just a common vessel. Just a normal, common housewife. Just a normal, common man. None of us are in our own right enough for this war. So anyone who's beginning to address these issues, who kind of says, well, I have all that it takes. I have great skill, great knowledge. What are you? Foolish or just profoundly arrogant? The fact is, do you see what's already the interplay of paradox? We bear this great glory in what? A jar of clay. But now he sort of takes this paradox into language I'm not particularly fond of. We are hard pressed on every side. That describes my life. I don't know about yours. Hard pressed on every side, but not crushed. Is that hopeful? Yes. Is it hopeful? A lot of times, no. Because frankly, I feel crushed. But if I'm not to be crushed, then I don't know what to do with the fact that I feel crushed. I'm hard-pressed and I feel crushed. But he's hard-pressed and he's not crushed. So am I not crushed or am I crushed? I know I'm not supposed to be crushed, so maybe I'm not crushed. Or maybe I've got to do something spiritually to be not crushed, and I'm not doing it, so now I'm at fault. Do you understand? Christianity, in some sense, leads to a very natural madness. Okay, I am this, but I'm not this, but I know this, but okay, it gets worse. We're hard-pressed on every side, but not crushed. Perplexed, but not in despair. Really? Okay, well, then what do I do with my despair? Prozac, again, no mockery. I've used Prozac for periods of time in my life, up to 3 to 4 years. I'm very grateful I live in an era where you can use an antidepressant to raise the reality of lowered serotonin. If you have any trouble taking vitamin D spiritually, somebody really needs to pray for you. And in the same way, you may be depressed. It's not the same thing as despair. So the reality is, I'm perplexed but not despairing, persecuted but not abandoned. Really? Two dreams I had last night were of people who hate me, and who believe I'm like one of the worst people on the face of the earth. And they both showed up in my dreams. And actually, they showed up separately, and then toward the end of the night, they showed up together. They've never met. But my dream life has the potential to bring all sorts of darkness into a whole new play. But I'm not abandoned. I'm struck down, but not destroyed. Please hear the next phrases. It really is the summary of what I wish for us to begin the day with. We are always carrying about in our body the death of Jesus, so that the life of Jesus may also be revealed in our body. For we who are alive are always being given over to death for Jesus' sake, so that his life may be revealed in our mortal body, so that death is at work in us, but life is at work in you. Our lives are meant to be an interplay, and that word is really one of those where you ought not move quickly from the word I just used. It is an interplay of death and life. And our lives today are meant to make something known about the death of Christ. And our lives today are meant to make something known about the life of Christ. So, are you aware of your own dying today? I yesterday was on Skype with a friend of mine, two friends of mine who live in Chiang Mai. And as I was interacting with them, interacting because I care for them, love them, but also because 4 days ago, the older friend, Janet, was just discovered to have inoperable pancreatic cancer. That's the first time I've said that in public. Let me try it again. She has inoperable pancreatic cancer, and she has 3 months, probably at most, to live. And as I was interacting with Janet and our friend Pam, Pam, 42-year-old single missionary, deeply grieved by her mentor and friend's impending death. Janet, 69-year-old long-term Thailand missionary, is ebullient. She's just happy. And she's also aware that it's a bit of a problem for Janet. Because Janet's grieving, Pam is grieving, and Janet is just, she's rocking. She's saying, I got 3 more months, and I will be face to face with Jesus. And she's also aware that she's got to enter the grief of others, including her own grief. And Pam's aware that she has to enter into the celebration of Janet's. In other words, they're in different worlds. One is dying but so aware of life. One is alive but so aware of death. That's the dilemma for almost all of us. We're all dying. We're all living. But some of us right now are in situations where our dying is far more prominent to our own taste buds, to our own senses, than our own living. And there are others in this room where your living is so much more alive and so much more present than your dying. We each have different seasons of life. Bless that. That isn't wrong. But when I was interacting, and I'm grieving. I'm more grieving than I'm celebrating my friend's departure. And so, as I'm saying, I am so sad. We missed her by 1 day. She had been in Israel for almost 3 months. She returned to Thailand the day we left. And so I said to her, I'm so sad we didn't see one another face to face. And I feel, other than prayer, I don't know what to offer, what to give. And she said, well, you don't need to worry. I'm not going to ask you to come back and do my funeral. And I'd love to see you before I die, but I know your schedule, and I know that's just not going to be possible. And even sentences like that, I'm going, how do I embrace that? And say, my schedule is too busy to fly back to Thailand to say goodbye to a friend. How do I live with that? But my friend blessed me by saying, yeah, that's true. I'm not going to ask of you to come back. And I said, well, is there, anything that you would like? Anything I can do? And she said, well, you see me right now, don't you? And I said, yeah. And she said, all I see is your picture, because you don't have a camera on your cheap computer. Yeah. She said, do you know you can go to Walmart and buy a camera for $40 or $50? It's like, honestly didn't know you could do that. And I said, no, I didn't. She said, well, do it. And so Bruce and I yesterday, he kindly took me to a store and I bought a new camera so that I could give my friend, what an odd thought, give my friend the gift of my face rather than merely my voice. And my friend and I spoke this morning, and she was so blessed. And what a humble thing to say. She was so blessed by my face. And yet now with my face, she said, well, it's so good to see your face, and did you sleep well? I said, Janet, you're dying. Let's talk about your death, not mine. And she said, bad dreams? I said, funny to ask. Indeed, two enemies showed up who don't know each other, and they interacted in my dream against me. I'm telling my friend about my dying. My dying seems really small compared to my friend's dying. But my friend who's alive and who's dying is really concerned about my living and how I'm entering into my own death. Isn't that the living of the gospel? You may be encountering yesterday and today a kind of dying and a kind of suffering that is far more than what you know in your own heart and life. What we would ask of you is a very simple phrase: don't minimize your dying, because there are others who are dying more egregious deaths. Your dying is precious to God. And He wants you to enter that dying for the sake of asking, how is the dying of today meant to reveal the death of Christ? If you're ashamed of or unwilling to name your own dying, and what does your dying include? Your dying includes your addictions. Your dying includes your sexual struggles. Your dying includes the rage, the hurt, the confusion, the doubt that you all feel at some level with regard to your God. Do you have the courage to enter your own dying? If you do, it is for a larger good, and that is to make known the death of Christ. Our dying makes known His death. And yet, my dying is not the final word. It's never the final word. It is my living, and that is my resurrection. And it is His resurrection. It is the fact that I look at those passages and say, I'm perplexed. Yeah, I know that. But I'm not abandoned? Really? And I am not. I am not abandoned. There are moments, indeed, I feel profoundly abandoned, but I am not. So the reality of resurrection wins. It really does win. As Jen put it so beautifully yesterday with regard to the Lord's Prayer, every time we bring even a cup of cold water to one who lacks the ability to gain their own, we have given that water to the very presence, person of Christ. So will we enter today our own dying for the sake of others living, and for the sake of our living, really for the sake of making known His resurrection? And if that's what we have come together to do, to not merely be informed about trafficking, about exploitation, abuse, harm, but far more, we are people here of the resurrection. And for that reason, we have every right and every reason to be bold, to be free, to be confident, and to move forward with the promise that something as small as a cup of cold water, as small as a dying friend saying, "You look tired." That is a gift that opens the door for us each to live out the resurrection. Let me pray. Jesus, use this day. Use our time together to reveal your heart for us and your heart for those who have no voice, who have no power, and who long for your presence through our faces to bring hope. And we ask that you would move our hearts toward you and toward the world that you have created for your glory. We ask that in your name. Amen.